Well, hello everybody. Another vlog from me. Today I want to talk to you a little about one of the Faversham ghosts. Recently when I went to Creek Creative, I saw these amazing illustrated cards. These cards are from hand-drawn giclée prints by Atomic Scribbler, and it's Jason at atomicsquib.com at illustrator J, and he has a blog about his paintings, so you can go to his website on atomicsquib.com and read his blogs. It says, this print and many others available in a range of sizes and formats in my shop. So he's got an Etsy shop, etsy.com shop Atomic Scribbler. Dan got me these last week when he went to Creek Creative with some more of my candle stock. He bought me 4 designs. The first one is The Lost Sailor of the Shipwright's Arms. The second one he bought me was Diana's Walk at Bising Wood. The third one is Ghost Ships of Goodwin Sands. A lot of lives have been lost on Goodwin Sands. They're quite perilous. Again, it's a sea captain. And finally, the 3 Witches of Faversham. I love the design. I love the artwork. It's stunning. I think I'm going to check this guy out sometime early next year on Etsy, because I'd seriously be interested in buying some more of his work. I love it. These 4 cards were £3.50 each. I think he'd sold quite a few because Anne had apparently had to go scrabbling around in the back for them. Fantastic, beautiful artwork. The one I'd like to talk to you about today is The Lost Sailor of the Shipwright's Arms, which is this one here. Now then, the Shipwright's Arms is a 300-plus-year-old pub by Oare Creek. The address is Ham Road, Hollowshaw, Faversham. It's at Oare Creek. It's a 300-year-old pub in the marshes by the side of an inlet of the Swale. It was a mile from the nearest house at one time. Of course, Oare has a little village. Now, my Dan has quite a close family association with Oare and Oare Creek, and I'll talk to you about that in a little while. But first of all, let's concentrate on the ghost of the sailor of the Shipwright's Arms. Now, many years ago, a Dutch ship ran aground in the marshes near the Shipwright's pub. The captain escaped the sinking ship and, seeing the distant light of the Shipwrights, made his way through the harsh terrain towards his salvation. Now, this event occurred sometime in the 19th century. Some accounts have him dragging a mysterious religious icon made of iron along behind him. Finally, more dead than alive, he made it to the pub and banged loudly on the door. The publican heard the noise, but fearing the banging was made by pirates or bandits or other such scallywags, ignored the racket and remained in bed. Let's face it, he was probably drunk. The next morning, the barman opened the door, most likely to visit the privy, only to find the prostrate body of the captain, dead from exposure and exhaustion. Since that time, a ghost of the captain has been seen lurking about the place and scaring the customers with his glowing red eyes. Now, after a few bevies, that's probably quite a scary thing. The Shipwrights is known for its food. It's a very, very popular pub in Faversham. Dan and I have been there, although when we were there we didn't feel any ghostly activity. Now, if you believed in ghosts, you might well believe this story. We know not whether there were any other sailors that perished when the ship floundered, but as they've never mentioned in the accounts, it's possible that this was a lone sailor used to confronting his problems head on, rather than a group of sailors. He was very much part of his ship. He sailed boats around various seas, navigating by the stars, wrestling sharks to their death, doing it all with his shirt off, all fine and dandy, muscles glistening under the harsh, blistering sun. Sounds a bit pirate-like, doesn't it? But the life of a sailor in those days, especially a sea captain, would have been quite harsh. In my Scottish ancestry, I had a fourth great-grandfather who apparently, according to my auntie, sank with his ship on the Solway Firth, which is very perilous, between Cumbria and Dumfries and Galloway. And he was the only one in the family who was a merchant seaman. All the other men in the family seemed to be shoemakers. And my fourth great-grandfather perished just before Christmas 1823, when my great-great-great-grandfather, his only son, was only 6 months old, and his wife left a young widow. She was a lot younger. She was in her early 20s. I once wrote a sea shanty called 1823, in brackets, the Ballad of Daniel Litterick. If you would like Dan and I to record it, please let me know. It tells a ghostly tale. You know, I'm a bit kind of obsessed with ghosts. Anyway, it's a very romantic ghost story. So if you would like to hear the Ballad of Daniel Litterick, do let me know. So this sailor, when he's not the man's man on his boat in the blistering heat of the sun, with his muscles rippling, except when navigating by the stars. Why, when he's a can-do kind of guy, and after trekking through miles of mud, sea and marshes, and finally reaching potential salvation, does he give up so easily? Anyway, the pub itself is fabulous in a great location. It's really nice on a warm day to spend an hour or two there. If you should happen upon the lost sailor of the Shipwright's Arms, some cold, dark, windy, stormy night, as you drink your well-earned pint, or perhaps a drop of rum, a wee dram, give him a smile and a wink and ask him, why the hell didn't you kick the damn doors down in rather than just crawl off and die? Now, as I said earlier, Dan has a family history associated with Oare and its creek. Now, many years ago, Oare, which is a couple of miles outside of Faversham, and the village itself is up a hill, and down below is the creek, and there are some houses along the creek as well. Oare Creek was the second most important area for oysters after Whitstable. Now, my Dan had a third great grandfather from nearby Ospringe, John Young. Certainly the Youngs are still associated with the area because it's been well known in more recent times for Young's boatyard. And all along the creek are these boats and yachts of all kinds. Now, this John Young settled in Oare. His first wife was Emma Adsley, and he had two sons, Mark and Thomas Young. Sadly, poor Emma died young, and in due course, John met and married a second lady. Her name was Jane Fuller, and they had a large family. Now, the eldest of these children by Jane Fuller, as far as I can recall she was the eldest, was Dan's great-great-grandmother, Eleanor Rosetta Young. She married a gentleman called Alfred James Cornelius, and he worked at the gunpowder works. In the Faversham area there were 3 gunpowder works. One of these was at Oare, and they were owned by a Mr. Hall and his business partner. And they employed a lot of local men, including Dan's great-great-grandfather, Alfred James Cornelius. The sister of Alfred James Cornelius married Eleanor Rosetta's half-brother, Mark Young. So talk about keeping it in the family. And the Youngs also married into the Philpotts. Anyway, John Young worked at the Gunpowder Mill. On the 30th of December 1866, John Young was one of a handful of men, I think 10 or 11 in number, who were chosen to do some special work up at the Gunpowder Mill in Oare, when there was a terrible explosion and the men perished. None of the men could be identified because they'd been blown to smithereens. However, the one exception I found in records was of John Young, who was identified by his wife Jane from his head, which was in a basket. All the men had a mass burial, and it doesn't seem to have been marked by a stone. It's very tragic. Unbeknownst, presumably to John, Jane was expecting the youngest of their children, who was baptised the following August. It's very sad that he didn't even live to see the birth of his youngest child, another son. Now, roll forward, well over 100 years. I told Dan the story of his third great grandfather and the Gunpowder Mill incident. Now, the incident, I will also say, was not the first, because one of the other gunpowder mills had also been targeted not long before, and it was believed that the more recent one, on the 30th of December 1866, was deliberate, and a deliberate attack against the company. Anyway, it was probably about 18 months ago, Dan decided to go to the nature reserve, which is where the gunpowder mill was, in Oare. And he had a very beautiful time. I was staying in London at that time with my mum-in-law. And Dan, because it was the weekend, decided to take himself off for some nature. So he was enjoying soaking up the surroundings, when suddenly he heard a whistle past his ear and a thud. He went to investigate, but nothing was there. And it was a loud thud, and Dan was convinced it was his third great grandfather, John Young, saying, "Hi there, Dan, it's me, it's Grandad." So if you're wandering around the nature reserve at what was the gunpowder mill in Oare, Faversham, watch out and look around you in case you too see or feel a head whizzing by. One of my questions is, are you a Young or a Cornelius? Do you live in Faversham, or do any family members live there? Do you have any interesting tales to tell? Why not get in touch with me and let's swap notes. I hope you enjoyed this little tale, and I look forward to telling you another tale soon. So, bye for now.